Hey, happy Tuesday. Happy book review day. Today's unsolicited book review is a bit of a throwback to my very favorite book of all time. It's the book I've read most times of any book I've read, and I continue to go back to it. In fact, I just re-listened to it, which is why I figured I would do this review. It is Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes. And this is a bit of an artifact, this book. This is actually the book that I got when I took a class with my professor, Bill Dyer, and it was the big book class. So all of the books were 700 pages or more. In fact, we read Clarissa, which I think is like 1,500 pages, depending on the edition. So this was relatively a breeze by comparison. And I just fell in love with it. The book turns, I think, 415 years old this year, or maybe next year, I can't remember. Definitely over 400 years old. And it continues to make me laugh and think about the inventiveness that can go into writing and fiction in general. People who have a passing knowledge of Don Quixote, think of him tilting at windmills. And that's the first part of the book, right? This is like the grand adventure, the going out, the first sally, trying to conquer the world and be this knight errant. But my favorite part is part two. In part two, which was published years later, and after a fake Don Quixote part two came out, which I also have a translation of over there, Cervantes was angry that this book existed out there, and this part two is so crazy. I mean, it's crazy to think about it being written in 1615, and for it to feel as vibrant and alive. I mean, it's metafiction. In the part two, part one exists. And so people see Don Quixote and Sancho Panza walking around and they know stories about them. Like they know their intimate thoughts. And that really disturbs the characters to be like, how do they know this stuff? How do they know the stuff that happened in private? And in fact, there are things that are being aired that Quixote didn't tell Sancho about, and vice versa. And they're learning about this and realizing that one another is being dishonest or has been dishonest in the past. I don't know. I mean, there are lots of translations of this book, and I've probably read 4 or 5 different ones. I still come back to the Penguin Classic, and honestly, I don't even remember who John Rutherford. So that's the edition that I generally go back to. There's a Judith Grossman edition that came out a couple of years ago, I think to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the book. And that one's really good as well. The audiobook's a great way to listen to it. But in this book, what you get is somebody shooting for the fences, kind of regardless of whatever everybody else wants, going out, or what everybody else thinks, I should say, going out and, trying to achieve their heart's desire, and really grasping the most out of life. That's part one. Part two is struggling with realizing that people know your innermost thoughts and private things about you, and what you do with that. And then there are people who try to manipulate Don Quixote and Sancho Panza and make them playthings, and how those characters react to that. Quixote is the one that is always the visual representation of the book, but Sancho Panza really thrives in part two, and his governance is just, it's one of the funniest, but also like most insightful moments in literature, and I come back to it again and again. So anyway, if you have it on your list of books to read, you should read it. And if you don't, you should also read it. And if you want to talk about it, I am all ears. I never get tired of talking about it. So anyhow, let me know what you're reading, if it's Don Quixote or otherwise. And hope you have a great day. Bye.